Every year, the Jehovah's Witnesses have an annual meeting. Every year they have an annual meeting. What is this? The Department of Redundancy Department? Golly. Anyway, they have a meeting that's this showcase of all things new and exciting in Jehovah's Witness land. Any new publications, any new building projects, any changes to their doctrines and understanding. It's a very big deal for Jehovah's Witnesses. They sort of start talking about it, whispers about what might be revealed at the annual meeting. So there's a lot of anticipation going into it. Now, I'm going to make several videos. I already put one out today about one of the big changes with the 2 new governing body members. This is going to be a video for those that generally like to have a longer video. Sometimes I'll make a short, concise video and people will be in the comments and say, man, I wish I could hear a little bit more of the talk so I could really understand what they're saying. So this video is for you. For people that are like, oh, not an hour-long video, well, I can't sit through and listen to all of that. Can't you just do it in 12 minutes? Well, that video for you will be tomorrow. So I'm going to have a longer version that's just breaking down everything that was said. And then tomorrow I'll release a condensed version that's like 12, 15 minutes long about some of my personal thoughts about what's going on with the annual meeting and things like that. So a little bit for everyone, as this is a pretty exciting time. So with all of that being said, let's do this.
What a beautiful group of Jehovah's precious servants. Maybe we'll coin a new expression today, gray beards of righteousness. We welcome one and all to this very special day, the annual meeting of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania. To prepare our hearts for the program, we encourage all to now enjoy the following video prelude that highlights joy, goodness, and the good news.
I need you to picture the situation. Imagine that someone controls everything that you do. They control the movies you watch, the magazines you read, the books you buy, where you go on vacation, how you spend your weekends, how you spend your weeknights, what you think about. An organization, a group of men for your entire life has told you what are, and these are their words, not mine, what are good thoughts and bad thoughts, what are positive feelings and what are negative feelings. They have prescribed to you your own feelings. That is how much control they've had. Now, one of these feelings, if you're a man, that has come up for, as far as I know, when I was a Jehovah's Witness and outside, every single man, once they start getting facial hair, is what would I look like with a beard? And the common thing to do in Jehovah's Witnesses before that was allowed was when you'd go on vacation, you would grow your facial hair out to see, man, what would my face look like with a beard? These people that have been telling you for the last, let's just throw something out there, 30, 40, 50 years have been telling you, no, you don't get to know what your face looks like with a beard. Nope. We will not allow it. Look at the Bible. You've got to follow Bible principles. Something that, like one little personal decision that you could have made. And they have held that back from you. And now all of a sudden, you get to do the thing. Do you think that this is nervous laughter, as if, wait, why was it banned in the first place if it wasn't biblical all along? I don't think that this is genuine knee-slapping laughter at his gray beard of righteousness joke, because it's not funny. And you know what else isn't funny? People's lives, people's freedom to choose something. That is not funny. And the fact that they, throughout this whole thing, continue to laugh at something that people held so precious, their faith and their beliefs, something that dictated every decision they would make. Oh man, what is this going to do for my spirituality? What is it going to do for me in the organization? Now, it's just something that this guy is going to laugh at. He is laughing at your history as a Jehovah's Witness. He is laughing at all of the times you suffered and made the personal sacrifice not to grow facial hair. For all of those brothers that had a skin condition where they physically couldn't shave every day and so they had to have a little bit of stubble. All of the times that they wanted to be an elder so bad, but they were held back because of their skin condition. Because, hey, they just had to have not a full beard, but just a little 5 o'clock shadow, a little stubble. All of those people that for years have suffered, they are laughing at you now. I don't know about you, but if it was me sitting in that audience, I would not be the one growing out my beard. I would be like, wait, listen here, mother sucker. There is no way I have been making this sacrifice for the last 50 years, and now you're just going to joke about it. Because the joke is the religion at that point.
So what an eventful year it has been. As expressed at Psalm 65, verse 11, Jehovah has indeed crowned the year with goodness, in a spiritual sense. Since our last annual meeting, Jehovah has directed his people in many different ways, reflecting his love and wisdom. Of course, the most significant occurrence is that we've welcomed back thousands who had been removed from the congregation. And certainly there has been great joy in heaven, but here on earth as well. We're delighted to have these dear ones back with us once again. Wouldn't you agree?
Boy, oh boy, what a year it has been. Man, all of these great, rich blessings. One of them, and I'm going to need a big old round of applause for this one, guys. We have been able to welcome thousands of people back into the congregation. Isn't that a wonderful blessing? Joy in heaven and joy here on earth. Can I get a whoop whoop, boys? There is more than one person. There are thousands of people that are Jehovah's Witnesses that believe this, sitting there, that will, I promise you, will ask themselves, wait, couldn't disfellowship people always come back to the congregation? That's not a new thing. Why are we clapping about something that we've always been able to do? He's like, oh man, it's been such a great year of changes and all these great blessings. We can even welcome new ones back to the congregation. Like, I know they made a few adjustments, but people were always welcome to become a Jehovah's Witness again if they chose. So why the applause?
Also, we were thrilled by this year's conventions featuring the good news according to Jesus, as we saw in the video prelude. And we just completed a global campaign to start Bible studies. We see the growth that's taking place in the field. And in other news, there's a new product in the Bethel Commissary, beard butter. Not to be confused with the butter that you spread on your toast. Yes, adjustments to our dress and grooming were also a highlight of the year. Additionally, less than a year ago, the PVC opened for tours. Not to be confused with polyvinyl chloride for all you plumbers out there. No, we're talking about the PVC, the Patterson Visitor Center. Here's an experience from the first century village. A young girl was very impressed by the village and was trying to just understand, comprehend what she was seeing around her. She noticed all the costumed attendants walking around, demonstrating trades, or just speaking with the visitors. She asked her mother, "Are these resurrected ones?" A young boy about 10 was with his family and enjoyed seeing a brother in costume demonstrating the wine press. Well, the family continued walking through the marketplace and then into the courtyard, but the little boy kept coming back. He kept coming back to the wine press, and the costumed attendant told him, "You must really enjoy it here." And he said, "Yes." Then the boy paused and he said, "I'm from the future."
A modern 10-year-old knows how to download PC ports and mods for his favorite video game so he can illegally play them for free, or an altered version of it for free. This story is 100% made up.
Now, in years gone by, Brother Russell Curzon, many of you remember him. He was sort of like the Bethel historian because he would relate specific events that occurred on that day to the morning worship chairman, who often would share them then with the Bethel family. Well, today is October 5th. So put on your thinking caps for a moment. What noteworthy events in history have occurred on October 5th? Does Meany, Teakle, and Parson ring a bell? Yes, the handwriting on the wall appeared in Belshazzar's palace on October 5th, 539 BCE, according to the Gregorian calendar. But what about in our common era? In the month of October 1924, Jehovah's people were busy distributing around the world a printed resolution entitled Ecclesiastics Indicted. Now, this is a copy of that tract, life-size. Imagine distributing this tract to people in your territory or putting it in their doors. The introduction to the resolution stated the following: "The indictment herein is laid chiefly against the clergy, showing that they have fallen before the temptations of Satan, proved unfaithful to the Lord and to the responsibility resting upon them, and that this is the chief cause of the world's present deplorable state." Strong words from the organization back in 1924.
You know what book they were also passing around in 1924? A little thing called Millions Now Living Will Never Die. And guess what it predicted? It predicted that the end of the world was going to happen just the following year, in 1925. That's why on the cover there you could see it said, "Civilization Doomed." I don't think it's a good idea to remind people just how wrong your organization has been over the years, because they might start asking themselves, is it possible that these guys could be just as wrong as they were back then?
Point number 3 of the resolution stated this: that they, the clergy, have failed and refused to preach to the people the message of Messiah's kingdom and to point them to the evidences relating to his second presence. And being unwilling to wait the Lord's due time to set up his kingdom, and being ambitious to appear wise and great, they have, together with their co-conspirators, claimed the ability to set up God's kingdom on earth without God, and have endorsed the League of Nations and declared it to be the political expression of God's kingdom on earth, thereby breaking their allegiance to the Lord Jesus Christ and declaring their allegiance to the devil, the god of evil. And to this end, they have advocated and sanctified war, turned their church edifices into recruiting stations. Does that sound like any of the churches in modern times? Acted as recruiting officers for pay, and preached men into the trenches there to suffer and die. Quite a resolution. Ecclesiastics Indicted.
What the Riddler over here doesn't quite understand is that this is a time when Jehovah's Witnesses really stood for something, when they would say their beliefs with their chest out loud, where they had a message to preach. As many of you guys know, I have just got done reading every Watchtower and Awake magazine from 1995 and then in 2024 just to compare, just to see how much the religion has changed. And one of the things I took away from this was that back in the day, 30 years ago, Watchtower stood on business, baby. They would say something with their chest. Everything now is, I don't know. Their preaching is the equivalent of just like walking around the grocery store and saying, hey, 2 for $5 for cans of beans. That's a pretty good deal. Prices are crazy. Hey, you want to know about a time when food won't be so expensive? Check out this website, jw.org. And they walk away with their head held high thinking that that accomplishes something. Other than someone in a Trader Joe's thinking, wow, what a psycho. I hope I'm not shopping at 11:14 on a Saturday afternoon ever again, because that was very uncomfortable. Their new style of preaching is nonsensical. But back here, they had a message to preach. They had beliefs to be spoken. They were not afraid to be different. Now I don't even know what to call it. Is it even preaching at this point anymore? Anyway, just interesting to hear him talk about, wow, what a powerful message. Well, it sounds pretty powerful because nowadays they don't have a powerful message to preach anymore.
Nothing has changed. Clergy still teach lies, foment war, and fail to preach the good news. They're still riding on the back of the beast, too. Well, back in 1924, as reported in the October 2024 study edition of the Watchtower, in the small town of Cleveland, Oklahoma, Brother Frank Johnson finished distributing the tracts 20 minutes before he was to be picked up by other publishers. Well, he couldn't just wait out in the open because men from the town were angered and they were seeking to find him. So Brother Johnson decided to hide in a nearby church. Finding it empty, he left copy of ecclesiastics indicted in the preacher's Bible and at each seat. He exited the church as quickly as he had come. Well, he still had some time, so he visited 2 more churches, following a similar pattern. Frank rushed back to the spot where he was to be picked up. He hid behind a fuel station, keeping an eye out for the men who were with him. The men drove by, but they didn't see him. As soon as they were gone, Frank's fellow preachers who had been witnessing nearby arrived to pick him up, and they all drove off together. Now, as they were leaving town, one of the brothers recalled, "We passed by the 3 churches. There were as many as 50 people standing out in front of each church. Some of the people were reading the tract, others were holding it up for the preacher to see. Well, we had a very close call," he said, "but we thanked Jehovah our God for his protection and the knowledge to outwit these enemies of the kingdom." So that's part of our theocratic history, your theocratic history. You continue to preach with the same boldness.
Now, in watching this the first time, I have to say that this might have been one of the more unremarkable annual meetings that we've had in a long time, but I was honestly kind of expecting that. Because after I did my little experiment to see what the religion was 30 years ago and what it is now, it was readily apparent, and it wasn't even close, that their religion has gotten so simple and underwhelming. And I think this is a perfect representation of that. The poetry writes itself. Here you are thinking you are walking into the special meeting. It's the annual meeting. Oh, this is where all the big news happens. What's going to be next? Hold on to your seat. And this guy takes this opportunity to tell you this story about Frank Johnson and this ecclesiastic indicted. And oh man, he was hiding, he was going and putting the magazine in people's Bibles. My brother in Christ, you published this exact same story in the October 2024 Watchtower. You literally just published this story, and you are rehashing it at the most important meeting for Jehovah's Witnesses out of the year. That is how boring their religion has become. He couldn't even come up with all of the stories you could tell. Why pick one that was just published this month? The October 2024 Watchtower tells this story. That is a shining example. And as we go through this whole thing, you'll see it more and more. But I just couldn't help but giggle to myself and see, yeah, anyone that doubts that they have simplified and dumbed down this religion, just think about that. Someone comes in and is waiting for all this new spiritual food, and they're sitting there scratching their heads like, didn't I just read that in the latest Watchtower? Yeah, because you did.
Those were exciting times, but we too are living in exciting times. On October 5th, 2002, it was announced at the annual meeting that printing operations in the United States would be moved from Brooklyn to Wallkill. Amazing. October 5th, 2013, what happened? Likely you recall Brother Jackson released the Revised New World Translation in English. Amazing. October 5th, 2019, what happened? The Ramapo Project was announced. Amazing. Jehovah continues to bless his organization.
Just out of curiosity there, Grinch, what's going on with that Ramapo project? Because if Jehovah's continuing to bless it, why has it been a year since we've heard anything about it? The last thing I can remember was some puff piece about how they invited some New York State officials to agree upon their clearing some trees out, and they were like, "Ooh, we get to clear the trees." So, any news of any kind? Any updates? Because usually you would hear about updates at the annual meeting. But instead, he decides to tell you a story that you just got done reading before you got here.
Well, the next part of our program is a symposium from 3 members of the governing body. Each speaker will introduce the next. But the first talk of our symposium will be given by the longest-serving member of the governing body, Brother Garrett Lush. The past July, he completed 30 years serving on the governing body. Brother Lush will now discuss the theme, Our Privilege to Glorify Jehovah.
As you can see, this is a mirror. Did you look into a mirror before you came here? So God's word is compared to a mirror that we can use to examine ourselves. On the other hand, also Christians themselves are compared to a mirror that reflects Jehovah's glory. So how do the scriptures use the word glory? Well, there are different types of glory. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 40 to 44, it says, "And there are heavenly bodies and earthly bodies. But the glory of the heavenly bodies is one sort, and that of the earthly bodies is a different sort. The glory of the sun is one sort, the glory of the moon is another, and the glory of the stars is another. In fact, star differs from another star in glory. So it is with the resurrection of the dead. It is sown in corruption, it's raised up in incorruption. It's sown in dishonor, it's raised up in glory. It's sown in weakness, it's raised up in power. It's sown a physical body, it's raised up a spiritual body."
When I was watching this, I couldn't help but think back about a very strange phone call that I had about 3 years ago. It's when I very first started making YouTube videos, and someone called me and said that they were in Bethel, and, a pretty common occurrence, these days. But I, talked to them for a while, and we chatted, and had to go, and then we chatted another time. And apparently that this person had worked pretty close with some of the higher-ups in Bethel, we'll say. And I don't know whether or not this was verified. I never could verify it. I don't know if it was true. But one of the things that this gentleman was telling me was that Mark Sanderson was a very ambitious and a very cunning and not a nice guy. He didn't have this spiritual persona. He was a businessman, a corporate man that was willing to kind of do whatever he could to get the job done. Again, not my take. That's according to this random person that I have no idea who it actually is. And I didn't think too much about it because there's oftentimes a lot of claims about the governing body and this, that, and the third. But when I was watching this, I just remembered that immediately because I don't feel that Garrett Loesch wants to be here right now. I don't feel that he wants to be out here giving this talk. And what is he saying? I know I edited it a little bit, but trust me, you're not missing anything. He's going on about glory and mirrors and polishing some metal. He sounds like a doddering old man that is just had been forced to give this talk. He is tied to his notes, And even when he tries to give that little, it exerts power. You know, like when someone's talking and they want to say something impactful and powerful, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can do that. You know, you can talk in a very excited way. Then you can slow down, maybe lower your voice a little bit and really get into it. And then bam, it happens so that you can really get people's attention. And that's what he was sort of trying to do. He lowers his voice a little bit and then power. There was nothing there. This lifeless corpse has been wheelbarrowed out on this stage, and it made me think, is this the doing of Mark Sanderson? Is this random phone call I got from someone that I have no idea who it is? Was that person actually right all along? That he's been the one pulling the strings? So then I rewound and just saw how they introduced Garrett Loescher, and of course they throw in the longest serving member of the governing body. It's like they want a peaceful transition of power. Spoilers, anyone that saw the video from earlier today, ZZ just turned on the air conditioner, so thank you for that, buddy. But yeah, anyone that saw that video knows that he is the one that introduces the 2 new governing body members shortly coming up here. But is this all a pose? Is this a way for Mark Sanderson and the new age, the new crop of governing body members to say, look, we have the support of the old guard. So if you don't want to get Morrised, because you've seen what I can do, you see how I can kick people out of Bethel, even the governing body members. No one's going to stand in my way. So do you want to get Morrised, or do you want to get your butt up there on stage and introduce my 2 friends, who now, coincidentally, we're going to have voting power over you old farts, and then we can change this organization however we want. Anyway, more on that a little bit later. But it doesn't, when he tried to do that, he's like, power. He was dead inside. And I feel like this might actually be a perfect representation of what those old Jehovah's Witnesses are feeling. Back, as old caged Schmiegel said, 30 years ago, I bet everyone that was around 30 years ago, really gung-ho about Watchtower, I bet they're feeling just like Garrett Loescher right now. Dead and lifeless, that this organization that they've so loved and cherished and given everything to is a runaway train, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. Unless you want to be outspoken and actually believe in something like Tony Morris, which you get blasted for. I find this is all just me speculating, of course, but again, this video, I warned you at the very beginning, it's going to be a lot of me ranting and just yapping. But it really feels like he is only here for a peaceful transfer of power. Hey, you old people out there watching this, look at this old guy. He is accepting of the new governing body, and so should you. This is a PR move that's not even trying to hide. They're not even trying to be sneaky about it. It's like they want to be in your face. I want you people. I'm going to introduce him as the oldest member of the governing body, the longest serving member. He's going to go out there and be a lifeless corpse. And then he's going to give his stamp of approval. So that organization that you knew back then is still approved today. That's what it feels like listening to him talk.
Now let's discuss 5 types of glory. Of course, Jehovah has and deserves the highest degree of glory. Then there's the glory of Jesus, which is second to the one of God. In John 1:14 it says, "So the Word became flesh and resided among us, and we had the view of his glory, a glory that such as belongs to an only begotten Son from the Father, and he was full of divine favor and truth." John 1:14. The Bible shows that Jesus was given more glory after his resurrection than he had before he came to the earth. It says, Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, now crowned with glory and honor for having suffered death. Hebrews 2, verse 9. The third point, anointed Christians also have a measure of glory. Jude, verse 8, says that in the first century there were some that were speaking abusively of glorious ones. Who were the glorious ones in the first century? Anointed overseers. They had a measure of glory when they lived on earth. Number 4, when taken to heaven, all anointed, not only anointed overseers, will receive everlasting glory. 2 Timothy 2:10 says, quote, "For this reason I go on enduring all things for the sake of the chosen ones, so that they too may obtain the salvation that is through Christ Jesus, along with everlasting glory."
So back in 1995, when Garrett Loesch was made a member of the governing body and he could peek behind the curtain and learn about the doctrine, that was still a Watchtower organization that he would have well recognized, because back then they would have said that all anointed Christians make up the faithful and discreet slave. Sorry, COVID. But it was later on that they made a change and said, no, the faithful slave, the ones that are giving the regular peons, the plebs out here, the spiritual food, that is only going to be the governing body. And now he has to give this talk where he's talking about different levels of glory. So, you know, the original gangster out here, the mob boss, is Jehovah, and then Jesus. And right below them is the anointed overseers. And he makes the distinction that underneath those anointed overseers are, okay, well, when we're in heaven, I guess we all have the same glory. They build the pyramid for you of this pyramid scheme. But it is fascinating that they wanted to make sure that this point came across very clear. The governing body, the anointed overseers, as he puts it, are more glorious than you. They have a special position. They are simply better than you are. And who says that? Not the Bible. It's definitely just them telling you that. Yeah.
Many of us who are older had the privilege of reflecting the glory of Jehovah for perhaps decades. Jehovah has allowed us not only the privilege of proclaiming the message of the kingdom, but also some have served as elders, pioneers, missionaries, Bethelites, construction servants, circuit overseers, or branch committee members. These are ways that we have reflected the glory of Jehovah. What a privilege we've had to do so, haven't we? In spite of all these privileges, we maintain a humble spirit. We appreciate that the privileges we have enjoyed are an undeserved kindness from Jehovah.
You know how it's like almost a joke? How it's almost a joke how if a governing body member is giving a talk, if they pause for any length of time after they try and muster something that sounds remotely inspirational, people will clap. And yet, this geezer gets nothing. He even asked the question, what a privilege we've had, haven't we? Haven't we? The reason I don't think he gets the normal routine clap here is because he's not putting any life into it. I don't think that this man wants to be giving this talk. Wouldn't you be ashamed if for you are the longest tenured governing body member? You have known decades of being treated like a god on earth. And now it's, hey, the annual meeting, your time to shine. You shine those shoes, you comb that hair, get that part going, and you get your, regular old routine clap. Don't we have this great privilege too? And you hear crickets. What a kick in the nutsack. Not only is this organization that's taken your whole life away having a hostile takeover by a younger generation that's changing every single rule. Notice he doesn't have a mustache or a beard. conveniently, everything is changing all around you, and you can't even get the clap. He must have been so pissed after he gave this talk. A talk, again, this is just me speculating, but a talk he didn't want to give in the first place, ushering in a new group of people that's basically going to replace him and take his job and change all of his hard work, all of his beliefs and teachings, all of this, and he can't even get the clap that he is so used to after doing this for 30 years. If it wasn't for what a sack of turds the governing body are, I would almost feel sorry for him. But I have no sympathy for them. I have no pity for them. They ruin people's lives, and so, yeah, he deserves it.
Having enjoyed so many privileges, what unique responsibility do we as older ones now have? We must allow the next generation to come up so they too can enjoy unique privileges in glorifying Jehovah. They are the next generation of circuit overseers, Bethelites, missionaries, construction servants, branch committee members, and so on. We want them to have the marvelous privilege that we have enjoyed as well. That means we must look for ways to teach them, to train them, to encourage them, so that they may use their youth and strength and ability to glorify Jehovah. What a privilege we have as older ones to train and teach younger ones. With that in mind, it is a pleasure to announce that 2 additional brothers have been appointed to serve as members of the governing body.
Okay, now I know I have my reputation of usually being out there in left field in cloud cuckoo land, coming up with these hypotheses and predictions. It's all fun and games. I gotta be honest with you. I think I'm onto something with this one. I feel like this one's real, so at least humor me a little bit. Watch that back just one more time, and let's just notice his facial expressions.
Privilege we have as older ones to train and teach younger ones. With that in mind, it is a pleasure to announce that 2 additional brothers have been appointed to serve as members of the governing body.
So, a couple more times, he does a little pause. No clapping. Does the pause, this one. Looks up at his audience. Still nothing. He's getting nothing from them. So he doesn't pause, okay. And then his voice changes. Boom, on the spot. You can tell he's like, and so it's my privilege to announce. And then he gathers himself. So he stumbles for a little bit, and then he gathers himself, and his voice changes immediately. Bang! With this happy, enthusiastic pitch. 2 new governing body members. And the crowd goes wild and starts clapping. As soon, on frame 1 of someone's, as soon as he hears that little tiny bit of smile that he has evaporates immediately like a fart in the wind. He's just done the pausing. Can I get any love here, guys? All y'all sitting in the audience, y'all are old just like me. Nothing. But 2 new governing body members. Woo! Uh-oh, I've excited the dogs. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe have been thinking too much. Maybe these lights are a little too bright and they've just completely melted my brain. But I am going to put my foot down and say, I don't think that he wants to be up here. And this was the last little straw for him, is this whole clapping thing. Getting no claps, getting no enthusiasm. 2 new governing body members, the crowd goes wild. I don't know. I would feel bad if I was in his position.
Well, brothers Jody Jedele and Jacob Rumpf. Both brothers are anointed Christians who have a long history of loyal service to Jehovah. Brother Jedele began his full-time service in 1989 and Bethel service in 1990. Brother Rumpf began his full-time service in 1995 and Bethel service in 2020. Both brothers served as helpers to the service committee of the governing body for a while.
Now, remember that thing I just got done saying about being out there in left field? Well, sometimes Wally's actually onto something. If you remember, I made a video probably about 3 years ago, which I thought I caught the governing body in sort of a funny little paradigm where they kept certain members that would seem reasonable to appoint to the governing body because they were well known by all Jehovah's Witnesses, because they had appeared on the JW broadcasting and whatnot. But I found a Watchtower from 2015 that stated specifically that all helpers to the governing body were not of the anointed. And in that, it's kind of implied that since 1992, there's been helpers. Oh, I can just put it on screen now. But there's been helpers, and that they are among the other sheep. Now, in that article, they have a whole list of everyone that was on those committees. How embarrassing would it be if they did appoint someone from that list and say, hey, you know what? He thought he could eat the magical Pop-Tart, and now he's going to be up in heaven with Jesus on all the golden stuff with the chariots and whatnot. So I was just so curious to see if they made an oopsie, and maybe they did appoint someone. They didn't. I swear they must have actually been paying attention to this and thought, oh, crap. Now we can't actually appoint anyone. So the last 4 appointees to the governing body have been completely unknown people. No one that really has been a forward-facing people of the PR team of Watchtower. Goose, stop eating batteries. Anyway, I just thought it was a little bit funny that I know you guys always think I'm crazy, but sometimes I'm not cooked, and I'm in fact cooking.
At the end of the millennium, faithful ones on earth will receive and display a measure of glory as perfect sons and daughters of Jehovah. It says in Romans 8:21, the creation itself will also be set free from enslavement to corruption and have the glorious freedom of the children of God. So, keep polishing that mirror. Look at the mirror of God's Word every day, and like a mirror, reflect God's glory by what you say and do. Appreciate your privilege to glorify Jehovah God. Help young ones to take on privileges of service. We trust you will, and we wish you Jehovah's rich blessing in this endeavor. So keep polishing, keep reflecting the light.
I'll be honest with you, I would not be surprised at all if this is the last we see of Garrett Loesch. If he sort of takes a backseat role, he pops in for, I don't know, a scripted update that's only a few minutes long, maybe a little puff piece updating you about something or another, I don't know. But I think him and his shiny gold mirror, maybe they've seen the last of their glory days of being a powerful member, the oldest member of the governing body, because I don't think that they're going to be looking to him for his wisdom. I think they're going to be looking towards the future for what they need to change and get this old geezer's ideas out of here. But let's press on.
Over 2,700 years ago, Jehovah God inspired the faithful man Isaiah to utter a prophecy that you and I are seeing fulfilled before our eyes. It's found in Isaiah chapter 60. I invite you to turn there with me. Isaiah 60, and let's read together verse 22. That verse says, the little one will become 1,000, and the small one a mighty nation. I myself, Jehovah, will speed it up in its own time. Like passengers in a car that is increasing in speed? Do you sense the momentum of what Jehovah's organization is doing today?
I have watched this 10 times now, and I can't figure it out. Why is there this long pause, and then they laugh, and then a little bit more pause, and then they realize they're supposed to be clapping? What is this little audience speaker interchange that we have just witnessed? At first I thought, are they having like applause signs? So it was like, okay, laugh, applause, and someone's over there pressing the button. And someone at Bethel was just trolling this guy, Jeff Windbag, and he's like, hey, how funny would it be if they laughed when instead I was supposed to press applause? Is that what's going on here? You have this awkward little video that they just pop up on screen here of this car just driving. Was something happening on the screen, and that's why they just showed this? And that's why they were laughing? I can't figure it out. Let me know down below in the comments if you have any suspicions or hypotheses about what the heck is going on here.
Jehovah is accomplishing a tremendous work worldwide, and all in connection with the kingdom preaching work. And in the face of satanic attack and the wickedness of the last days, what Jehovah is accomplishing truly glorifies his name. But because so much work is being done, there is a need for more workers to keep up with this work. And in this talk, we're specifically going to talk about the needs at Bethel and in theocratic construction. Well, what is the need? In Bethel, we have a constant need for spiritually qualified men and women who can help carry the load of the ever-increasing and complex work. And there is a particular need for young brothers who can apply to come to Bethel and be trained and in time qualified to serve as overseers or to take the lead in departments such as the service department or public information department, hospital information department, and many others.
I found it a little strange that he said this ever-increasing complex work. If you go back 40, 50 years ago for Watchtower, what were they doing? They were fighting legal battles, building kingdom halls, building assembly halls, printing literature, and making movies, and organizing their public preaching work. In 2024, they are building kingdom halls, printing stuff, online mostly, making movies, and organizing the preaching work. What has gotten more complex? In fact, you could almost argue the opposite. The world has gotten more automated. It's almost become less complex.
We need brothers who can, in time, qualify to serve on branch committees. And even in branches where the Bethel family is small, we need young brothers to apply. Because the brothers and sisters who have been carrying the load for years, we love them, but they're getting older. And they have a zeal for the work, but they recognize the need to train others so that Jehovah's work can continue. And what about theocratic construction? Well, there too, there continues to be a need for spiritually qualified men and women who can help carry the tremendous amount of work that is taking place in facility construction worldwide. And there too, we need spiritually qualified men who can be trained in time to take the lead as trade overseers, to serve as construction committee members, and care for other assignments.
I was just sitting in my chair for about 30 minutes, just staring at the wall, trying to figure out why I was like upset about what he just said there, because in the context of this whole thing, it doesn't actually seem that significant. But I think it's because he was the one that posed the question, well, do we need to apologize as an organization when we get stuff wrong? Nah. We don't need to apologize. We don't need to talk about it. Y'all just need to listen. So this smug little worm of a man now is saying exactly why they should be apologizing. And I think that's why it bothered me. hey, you old people that been in the branch committee for the last 30, 40 years, you guys are getting old and decrepit, can't keep up with all the changes. We need to replace you. Well, when they took those assignments, they fully believed that was the last one they would get. If you would like a real world example of this, I remember not just me, but a lot of my friends and family members saying that they were buying their Armageddon car. Well, you know what? I guess I have to upgrade my car, but this will be my last car I ever buy. I am going to drive this bad boy straight on through to the paradise, baby. Since I bought my Armageddon car, I think I've owned 4 different vehicles now. It's ridiculous that these people have put their entire lives on a promise that was made to them that the end would come in a certain period of time. And now, this bozo has the audacity to come up and say, we don't need to apologize. He knows damn well all of the changes that are coming down the pipeline. And this is just the beginning. Hey, we need to replace all of the old people on branch committee members. All of the branch committee. Wouldn't you think, as a Jehovah's Witness, wait, they need more brothers to be overseers and branch committee? Why are they planning so much for the future? The Watchtower has gotten a little bit wiser now. They are proactively planning for the future. Well, how old are you? 50? 60? Back in the day, that was nothing. They would write articles about people in their hundreds still saying, oh yeah, I'm going to be pioneering. Pish posh to all of that nonsense these days. How old are you? No, we need a 25-year-old to be a branch committee member, because if we give him that level of power and control over people at such a young age, it will solidify in his little undeveloped peanut brain that he is way more important than he actually is. He will get this power and control over hundreds of people that'll all look up to him. Oh yeah, I'm 26 years old and I'm already on the branch committee now. Oh wow, you are a branch committee member. This is going to create a whole new crop of hyper-zealous, annoying company men. The Bethelites that are going to be bred from this updated system are going to be obnoxious. And they're going to be the worst. The absolute worst. Underdeveloped, no social skill whatsoever company men that think they know everything. It will be the worst version of Watchtower that you've ever seen. Anyway, but again, I think this is why they do need to apologize. Because you have just thrown these people out to pasture. Just said, bye-bye. Thanks for your service. We're going to move on to our next phase of the boss fight now. See you later.
But how much work is there to do in theocratic construction? Just to give you a glimpse, consider some of the needs for kingdom halls in a few countries in Africa. Congo reports a deficit of nearly 1,900 new kingdom halls. Zambia reports a need for over 900 new kingdom halls. Mozambique and Angola each have a need for almost 500 kingdom halls. And in Nigeria, they have on their books a need for 2,000 renovations of kingdom halls in addition to the new ones that they need. And that's not to mention all the work taking place in major branch construction, the construction of remote translation offices, school facilities, assembly halls, and more. Is there a need? Absolutely. Young ones, especially you young ones in your teens, thinking about how you will use your life, can you get involved in the Bethel work and theocratic construction work? Should you? If you do, what will your life be like? Would you live to regret it? Or is it possible that it would lead to a most fulfilling life in this system of things? Well, to help answer those questions, we invite you to watch the following video, which highlights comments from ones who, when they were young, made the decision to get involved in Bethel work or theocratic construction work. Watching this video could be like looking at your life in fast forward. If you choose the course that these ones chose, how would that turn out for you?
Now I know I'll be accused of trying to create excitement where there really isn't any, and that's all fine and good. But take a second to think about what just happened. Here we have a governing body member. Instead of preaching doom and gloom, oh man, the end is right around the corner. You don't have the meme of the rubber-faced man saying we're in the last part of the last part of the last part of the last days anymore. You have a governing body member suggesting to teenagers to fast forward their life. What will your life look like in this system of things? Excuse me? You want them to fast forward their life to be thinking decades in the future? This is a fundamental narrative change for Watchtower. I cannot recall a time when they wanted teenagers specifically to be thinking about, oh man, well, what is my life in this organization and in this system going to be when I'm 50 years old? Most teenagers don't even think that they're going to see the last movie in whatever saga that they like. Oh man, for me it was like, oh, we're not going to see the last Star Wars movie. Oh, we're not going to see the last Batman movie. And then they rebooted the damn thing like 15 times. Oh man, the Iron Man came out. Well, we're never going to see the Avengers movie. Oh, then Avengers is here. And now it goes on and on and on and on. That was always the mindset. It's right around the corner. You have to keep Jehovah's Day fixed at the front of your mind. Always be ready for it. Now it's, hey, think about if you apply for Bethel, are you going to waste your life suggesting that you could be alive for your entire life in this system of things? It is a very big change, and they're walking a very interesting road. So I guess we'll have to see exactly how this plays out in the future and how they start talking about this. In my personal prediction, as soon as I heard that, I said the generation teaching is gone. Goose, you need to stop. Thank you. But yeah, I thought that this was the end of the generation teaching. I'm like, yep, that is gone. They have 2 new governing body members. They're going to be able to, get rid of that now, and you won't have Stephen Lett, protesting. He's like, no, we got to keep close in mind. They're like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever, Grandpa. No one's really going to care anymore at that point. But yeah, I'm very fascinated to see how this plays out in the future.
Let's watch.
My name is Pavel. I serve at the Finland branch.
My name is Brad Berkwin. I'm serving in the Congo.
My name is Gina Slay.
My name is Christopher Slay, and we serve in the Nigeria branch.
My name is Karen Ferro. I live in Argentina.
I grew up in a sign language congregation because I have deaf parents. And when I saw the sign language department for the first time, I was so impressed by it. And so I developed my first love for Bethel service.
As a young man, there was a lot of discussions with my father. He wanted really what amounted to a normal life in this system.
I got to be honest here. I really like this guy. I think his vest is pretty cool. He seems like he has a real sense of style. I mean, he's got everything really dialed in. His glasses, I'm not 100% sure about. I feel like they might look better on someone, I don't know, a little ruggedly handsome, maybe a little bit darker complexion, distinguished features. Maybe it's just my personal opinion there, but I feel like those glasses would really look good on someone else. But other than that, I think he has a very fine sense of style. Oh, that was really hard to do because I have my contacts in, and so actually wearing my glasses was really disorienting. If you didn't get the joke by now, I have the same, those are my exact same Burberry glasses that this guy has. So yeah, shout outs to this guy. He's got cool style.
Well, young brothers and sisters, we want you to be able to get involved in this exciting work as early as possible. And so, I have an exciting announcement to read. It reads this way. We are pleased to inform you that the governing body has decided to reduce the minimum age requirement to enter Bethel service or to assist with theocratic construction projects from 19 to 18 years of age.
This is a very smart business decision from Watchtower because usually, or back in the day, they would tell people that they wanted to, give it a year of pioneering just to test it out, test your fitness, make sure that full-time service was really for you. Now they're realizing that they don't want people to test out full-time service because then they won't want to go to Bethel. That is not something like, oh man, you do that for a year, like, oh man, I would just like to do this for the rest of my life. No, they probably won't. Another thing that happens is most kids that are in spiritual households, they pioneer after high school for at least 1 year so they can go to pioneer school. And what happens when they do this is they're super horny. If you're, there's someone that I think she still watches my videos, but we went to pioneer school. We were first-time pioneers together, and she can testify. People, they're just super horny. You have a bunch of 17, 18, 19-year-olds all grouped up together, pioneering for the first time, don't know anything, have hardly ever touched elbows with someone of the opposite sex before, and it is a breeding ground it's a breeding ground. Like, people a lot of times will meet their future husband or wife when they're doing their first year of pioneering, or sometimes like the connection of friends you make there. And so this would otherwise distract from getting free labor for Watchtower. If people have to go and build a life together, and now they're married and blah, blah, blah. Well, then they can't be free labor as readily accessible. So this is just a very smart business decision that Watchtower has made with this, and not really all that surprising.
And now a word to the parents. We know that you parents, you love your children and you want the very best future possible for your young ones. And so we encourage you, set goals of full-time service in front of your children and help them to achieve these goals. And will you miss them if they should be called to Bethel or they go off on a Kingdom Hall assignment somewhere? Of course you will. But don't hold them back and insist that they stay home with you for fear of missing them. You may be depriving them of the most fulfilling life. Why do we say lend? It's because Jehovah will give them back to you. In the new world, you will have an eternity to spend with your family together in paradise. But right now, we have a work to do. So we thank you for training your young ones to take the lead in full-time service.
This is a much easier sell to the young person listening to this than it is for the parent listening to this, because the parent has already, with their own experience of life, watched their own parents go from this is the most important work imaginable, working for the organization, the end is all right around the corner, from their birth now to their old age, maybe even death. They've witnessed an entire life cycle, essentially, in their own parents, of waiting for the end of the system of things, of making these sacrifices and getting nothing for it. Because you have to remember, if you are just a average Jehovah's Witness that kind of sort of believes, or if you don't believe at all, you live your whole life and then die, you get the exact same thing as someone that makes all of the sacrifices for the organization. You end up in the exact same place. This is a hard sell to look at parents now, and they know the parents have this working memory. They have seen it because of the generations that have gone by that have been serving Watchtower for over 100 years. We're living in a time now when people that are having kids, like my brother, he is able to look at this and say, wait a second. Not only did my grandparents go from crib to grave, but now my parents are about to go from crib to grave. Do I want my children to go from crib to grave also? Am I going to do that? It is a much harder sell. So I don't know exactly how this is going to go down. Hey, sacrifice your 18-year-old kid because, you'll get to spend time with them in the paradise. When in reality, you could stop being a Jehovah's Witness right now and you get the exact same reward because they've already witnessed what happens if you serve Watchtower or if you don't serve Watchtower. Nothing happens. Nothing changes. So why make the sacrifice? The sacrifice has to have this honorable goal behind it, right? No one wants to be a martyr just because someone dared them to. It has to have like this higher purpose. And Watchtower watering down their doctrine and becoming less focused on the Bible and more focused on just whatever the governing body says, it's losing that higher calling, that honor behind it. Now you just look like a dumbass.
Now a comment to our elders and circuit overseers. What can you brothers do to help the young ones on the path to serving Jehovah full-time in Bethel and in theocratic construction? Well, are you encouraging Bethel service? Are you helping the young ones to learn how to get involved in local projects with their local design construction department? School counselors are charting a path for our young ones in school. Shouldn't we be doing the same? To illustrate the impact that you brothers can have on the lives of these young ones, a brother that works with us at Warwick told us his experience. And he said when he was a teenager, he wanted to go to Bethel, but he hesitated because he wasn't sure if he could do it, and he didn't know if there really was a need. But his circuit overseer saw his potential and gave him a Bethel application and persisted in encouraging him until he could see the need, and he turned in his application. Well, now he's been serving for some years. He's married now, and he and his wife are making a fantastic contribution. But are there ones like that in your congregation, in your circuit, that may be just on the fence and would benefit from some encouragement? You can truly make a difference in how these young ones use their lives.
I feel like I'm just repeating myself at this point, but this is a complete narrative shift for Watchtower. They're talking about a younger generation of people and how they will use their lives going forward into the future, charting their life course. Oh, the school counselors are charting their life path. Well, we should be charting their life path. That sense of urgency, where is it, man? Where's the Armageddon is right around the corner? I'm sensing this is the very beginning of a monumental shift away from, let's everyone sit around and wait for, okay, we are going to make the proclamation of changing our message of hope to a message of judgment. I think we're moving away from that, and like we've been saying for a long while, they want to just look like an average, normal religion and try and lose all of the doomsday stuff.
And finally, a comment to the current generation who is carrying the load of oversight in Bethel and in theocratic construction. We thank you for your years of service, and to contemplate what Jehovah has been able to accomplish with your help is just fantastic. And now we thank you for training the next generation so that the work can continue and Jehovah can continue to get his work done. Now we know that you desire to continue in the work. You have a zeal for the work, and to feel productive and have accomplishment and feel valued, well, that's very much connected to our joy. We understand that. But as we get older, we know that there is a need to train the next generation so Jehovah's work can continue. And we know that you love Jehovah more than you do your personal privileges. And truly, we still want you involved. The young ones need your experience and your advice. And young ones are wise to recognize how much they can benefit from your wisdom. But we thank you for being ready to hand the job to these ones and then help them to succeed.
Well, one thing we can absolutely conclude is that the generation teaching is absolutely going out the door now. This part right here really solidified what I was saying about Garrett Loesch. He is just saying flat out, we thank you for your service, but it's time to make room for the next generation of witnesses. They are going to carry us into the next phase that we have already planned out. So thank you. Provide some wise counsel or whatever, but your services are no longer needed there, which is such a sad reality, in all honesty, because again, this is not just something that people do. It's a way of life. It is a personal identity for them. Being a Jehovah's Witness is more important than their family, their friends, their own life. They would sacrifice their own children, literally sacrifice their own children for this identity of being a Jehovah's Witness. And now they're being told, hey, we need to just kind of push you off to the side now because we realize that our prediction that this generation isn't happening, and we are going to just keep moving forward. So a really sad reality, but I think it's really funny to laugh at all the people that stayed in the organization when I left 10 years ago and told me that I was infected with satanic reasoning, that the end was right around the corner. I remember my dad was in tears. He said, I know what's going to happen to you in the very near future. And now it's like, brother, I know what's going to happen to you in the very near future. You are just going to be pushed out of the way and be a sad, remorseful, sorry pile of crap because you sacrificed everything for people that ultimately didn't care for you. And you sacrificed the people that did care for you. How does that feel, ya bozo?
Well, to conclude, we'd like to just mention one more prophecy that we are seeing fulfilled before our eyes. In this case, it's in the book of Psalms. And we invite you to turn to the 110th Psalm. Psalm 110 in verse 3 says this, Your people will offer themselves willingly on the day of your military force. You have your company of young men just like dewdrops. Well, as we've discussed, Jehovah is speeding up the work, and so therefore there is a need for more workers. Jehovah is willing to train you and entrust you, and Jehovah's organization is making arrangements for you to get involved as early as possible. Well, this verse reassures us that you young ones will respond. In fact, you are responding. This verse is being fulfilled. May you personally share in the fulfillment of this verse by taking advantage of opportunities to glorify Jehovah in Bethel and in theocratic construction.
If this is a prophecy that's being fulfilled, and the prophecy is that people would offer themselves willingly, then why are they having to ask and beg for people to join? If they're going to offer themselves willingly and the prophecy would be fulfilled, they should be completely silent on it, and they'll just receive the volunteers.
It was 140 years ago, in 1884, when Zion's Watchtower Tract Society was legally incorporated. Now, I know there are many gray beards here, but I understand that none of you were present on that occasion. That's reassuring. It was just as Zechariah chapter 4 and verse 10 says, it was a day of small beginnings, really just a handful. But what has Jehovah accomplished in the field in the last 140 years? Today, we have nearly 9 million who are preaching the good news of God's kingdom in some 240 lands and with publications in more than 1,000 languages. Brothers, aren't we moved to glorify Jehovah for what he has accomplished?
Now, forgive me if I don't get this 100% right, but I think I have it pretty well locked in my head. But anyway, here we go. So from 1990 to 1995, the Jehovah's Witnesses were able to gain 1 million followers. It took 5 years. So they went from 4 million to 5 million. And then 1995 is a pretty drastic change for Watchtower because that was the first time that they really touched the generation teaching. And it had a fairly reasonable result. People lost the sense of urgency of wanting to be a Jehovah's Witness. So after 1995, a new pattern developed. So 1995 to, 2002, it took 7 years to gain a 1 million increase for Watchtower. And then from 2002 to 2009, again, another 7 years, and they gained 1 million people. Then you go from 2009 to 2016. Again, another million people. So a new sort of paradigm had shifted. They went away from the 7 to 5% growth annually to something like 1.5 to 2.5% growth annually. So what has happened in the next 7 years since 2016, or 8 years since 2016? Because you would expect this pattern to be continuing, but it's not. They went from, I believe it was 8,100,000 in 2016 to now in the last report, 2023, which was 8,600,000. And I'm not using peak, I just remember the average ones. So their normal pattern now, even if you extend it by a year, is half of what their growth was. And this is after the fall off from changing the generation teaching. The pattern doesn't look very good. If you're making a projection and you meet that by half, it is time to sound the alarm bells. Something is wrong with your business model. It is failing dramatically. So any talk about growth in the organization, whatever numbers he's throwing out there, you can just stick your fingers in your ear or just laugh at him for being an idiot, because there's this clear pattern. 1990, year I was born, 5 years, 1 million people, and they were able to gain 1 million people while having a smaller group. So as your group gets bigger and you're able to baptize more children, you should be actually getting faster at reaching higher numbers. But it's not. It's getting slower. It's taking longer to gain another 1 million Jehovah's Witnesses, which means a lot of people are leaving. I hope I got most of those statistics right, but I'm fairly confident in my memory.
But how did we get to this point? And what has been a major factor in the global expansion that Jehovah's organization has experienced? And what opportunities are open in the field for our young ones? Please watch.
When you think of a missionary, perhaps you think of someone older who has been preaching for many years. But of course, many were very young when they started. In fact, in the mid to late 1940s, 30% of the missionaries sent from Gilead were under 24 years of age. They were young, energetic, full of life, willing to accept assignments around the world, and they accomplished incredible things. For instance, in 1943, we were preaching in 54 lands, and the number of publishers was still relatively small. Jehovah blessed their hard work and zeal. In just 5 years, the number of publishers worldwide nearly doubled. By 1953, it had doubled again, and the reach of Jehovah's organization expanded to 143 lands. That 10-year burst of activity laid the foundation for Jehovah's organization to grow into what it has become today. Over 8 million people spread across 239 lands, reaching billions with the truth. Young missionaries have directly contributed to the fulfillment of Jesus' words, preaching the good news of the kingdom for a witness to all the nations. But over 80 years have passed. Perhaps you're thinking, is there still a need for missionaries today?
The issue isn't that people don't want to be missionaries anymore because they think, oh, well, there's already enough missionaries out there. Look, we've already been covering the whole earth. Why would we need... They are aware that you want them to sign up to be missionaries because you are always reminding them to do more free work for Watchtower. So what's the actual reason? What's the real reason that people aren't? Because of your changes in doctrines make it fundamentally useless to go preaching. So you're experiencing the fallout from a change that had an inevitable outcome.
Well, what do the facts show? We see tremendous growth and potential for more growth around the world. What has happened just during the past service year? Mozambique had an all-time peak in memorial attendance of well over 400,000. That's more than 4 times the number of publishers in that land. Angola averaged over 900 new missionaries a month, new publishers a month. That's a lot, wow.
Our main preaching need at the moment in Madagascar is training of new ones. We have new publishers who are not even baptized yet, having progressive Bible studies. So we were very happy to receive new young missionaries being assigned.
When our branch committee learned that we will get some new missionaries to Latvia, we were really thrilled.
We were 3 years special pioneers, and later we received this letter. I was thinking, Latvia? What do you know about Latvia?
My legs was trembling, but then I say, oh, it's exciting.
For me, it's still like a dream, and sometimes I'm asking Francie, is it really real?
I was expecting maybe somewhere in Africa, and he said, no, you will have beautiful snow.
We really felt these new missionaries invigorating the field. Their enthusiasm is really pushing the work forward.
Now many publishers are more active in service and pioneer spirit is increasing.
I felt Jehovah's blessing in our assignment, especially by the children in our congregation. When they hug you, you feel like home and the language doesn't matter anymore.
I love my missionary assignment because it has opened my eyes to something beautiful.
The ministry is simply amazing.
Being a missionary it's something special, but on the other hand, it's quite a normal Christian life, focused on the preaching and enjoy everyday life.
It's okay to be afraid, to have doubts, but give Jehovah a chance.
Being a missionary is the biggest experience in my life.
My assignment strengthened my spirituality because now I know I'm not afraid of more difficult tasks.
I agree.
Incredible. Just how boring life as a Jehovah's Witness has become. Before, in the 90s, you would have stories of missionaries, and you are crawling through fake snake-infested rivers. You are baptizing hundreds of people. Man, we went there with just 5 missionaries, and now we have 5 whole congregations, and we had 20,000, attend the memorial. What are the current missionaries saying? Yeah, we enjoy our assignment. I think being a missionary is really neat. There's a lot of work to be done. Just these generic, smiling expressions. I love my assignment. It is so weird having experienced what the religion used to be like. And if you've been a Jehovah's Witness or were one back in their heyday, you'll know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you would get a missionary that would come to your congregation, and you'd have a special meeting, and they would just sit down, and it was like story time. Everyone would get their popcorn, sit in a circle, hold hands, and hear all the cool stories from missionaries. And they were exciting. There was persecution, there was danger, there was enthusiasm, there was zeal, but there was this overwhelming sense of urgency, like this person was right there on the front lines, God's holiest warrior, fighting the good fight. And now, what do these missionaries look like telling their stories? I really like it. It's pretty much like normal Christian life, we just focus on the ministry. The results are simply not there. The enthusiasm is not there, and the reason to do it is not there. What is the point of being a Jehovah's Witness? And I am very confident that Jehovah's Witnesses watching this are feeling this exact same thing. Whether or not they connect the dots, I guess that's still left to be seen.
So we need many more young people to take up missionary service. Well, that raises the question, how do you become a missionary? Well, the first step is to enter full-time service. And then, after you've been in full-time service for 2 years, what do you need to do? You need to apply for the School for Kingdom Evangelizers. SKE is the door to missionary service. You also need to have the spirit of Isaiah when he said, "Here I am, send me," willing to go wherever the organization might assign you. After you graduate SKE, you could receive an assignment to serve as a temporary special pioneer in your home country so that you can gain experience. And if you do well in that assignment, you could receive an assignment to serve as a missionary in another country. Missionary service is a thrilling opportunity to bring the good news to honest-hearted people in another part of the world. We need young people who want to go and make disciples of people of all the nations. Well, how old do you need to be to apply for the School for Kingdom Evangelizers? Well, we're very pleased to announce today that the governing body has decided that young brothers and sisters 21 years of age or older may now apply to attend SKE. Isn't that exciting and wonderful?
No, that's not exciting at all. But you know, there is something that we need to talk about. This idea of the governing body has decided. And someone pointed this out to me when I was streaming the reading of the Watchtowers. In the comments, they mentioned how they brought up to their dad. I think it was Sin Game Reviews. So shout outs to Sin Game Reviews. Sign Game Reviews. Don't know how to say it. Anyway, how when Moses took credit for providing water to the Israelites from the rock in the desert, he was banished from going to the promised land for saying, "Look at this water I've provided you," instead of giving credit to Jehovah. So that's like a biblical precedent, right? So when you hear the governing body has decided, how is this fundamentally different than the leaders of God's organization? You know, because they use Moses as an example for why they need leadership. If you look through Watchtower publications, like, well, why do we need leaders anyway? Can't I just have a relationship with God? They will take you back to, well, God has always used a human representative, and they will always point to Moses. So there's a very good precedent and a correlation here. So God's chosen human representative was punished. He was not allowed to actually go to the promised land. He had to die in the wilderness for making the error of taking credit for something that Jehovah did. So if Jehovah's the one behind the organization, why do they keep saying the governing body has decided? Isn't this an example of them doing the thing that God punished in the past?
What a thrilling symposium. We're delighted to have 2 new members of the governing body, and we're delighted by the adjustments to the age requirements for Bethel service and for the School for Kingdom Evangelizers. Did those changes come as a bit of a surprise to you? Well, that's sort of related to the next talk on our program. Brother Jeffrey Jackson will discuss the theme, "Don't be surprised by sudden changes." Brother Jeff, you have our attention.
A lot of the interesting things about this annual meeting aren't necessarily the changes that were made, but how they're setting up for future changes. And I think it's completely solidified by the smile on Luigi's face here as he's introducing this next talk about, hey, how can we prepare for the changes? So he's going to come in and really get everyone's minds prepped for no doubt what he knows is going to be a mountain of changes that are in the very near future.
Well, I'm sure we all agree with this fact. In recent years, there have been a lot of changes. Even since the last annual meeting, there have been many changes. Some of them perhaps are a little surprising or may seem to be sudden. But you know, brothers and sisters, when we look back on how these changes have come, we can see that Jehovah has gradually prepared us for each of these adjustments and changes. Let's review some of the recent changes we've had.
What changes have we seen with regard to our understanding of Bible teachings?
At the 2021 annual meeting, we received an adjusted understanding of John 5:29. It was explained that the resurrection of judgment will not be a judgment of condemnation. Rather, it will be more like a period of probation. The unrighteous mentioned at Acts 24:15 will have an opportunity to gain everlasting life, but their names will not be written in the book of life at the time of their resurrection. To have their names eventually written in that book, these ones will need to respond positively to the great educational work that will take place during the 1,000-year reign.
Every single time they talk about this re-education work that's going to happen after people are resurrected from the dead, it's always some guy standing with a little canvas here looking like Bob Ross, and he's always pointing to the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. Every single time they're doing this, it's always, well, the statue of Nebuchadnezzar with the gold head and the brass abdomen and the steel legs and the feet of molten clay. Like, don't they have, or do they have to learn anything else in order to enter the paradise? Or as long as you understand Daniel chapter 4, hey, bub, you're good to go. We'll see you over at the Apple stand.
Then, at the annual meeting in 2023, we gained enhanced insight into what we do know and what we don't know concerning Jehovah's judgments. We learned that the door of opportunity for people to take a stand for the kingdom does not shut when the Great Tribulation starts with the destruction of false religion. At that time, perhaps some will be like the Egyptians in Moses' day, who took a last-minute stand and joined the exodus of God's people. At the same annual meeting, we adjusted our views with regard to Jehovah's judgments of those who died in the flood and those who were destroyed in Sodom and Gomorrah. Also at that annual meeting, an adjustment was made regarding the reporting of our time and activity in our preaching work. Instead of focusing on reports, we try to make good use of every opportunity to witness. Then we received the 2024 Governing Body Update, number 2. In that update, we saw the need to adjust how we interact with those who have committed serious sins and have been removed from the congregation. What other major adjustments have we recently seen? In our preaching work, the emphasis now is on starting Bible studies and making disciples, not on distributing literature. To that end, the focus is on starting meaningful conversations, not just on using memorized presentations. Were you surprised by these adjustments? Perhaps so. But as we look back, we see how one adjustment in understanding gradually helped us with the next adjustment. Isn't it true that gradually Jehovah has prepared us? And when we look back on it, we see how logical this training has been to refine our understanding.
So for anyone not paying attention, he just spilled the beans here. He's tells you, the governing body, we got a plan going forward. Just look backwards and you can retroactively think about it. Each adjustment we've made has sort of led to the next one, and it all seems logical, just like it was planned out. These are not men that are getting divine inspiration to make these changes. They have a definite plan about where they are now and where they want to go in the future.
But events in the world likewise have changed. It's true, sometimes in the world you have sudden changes, for example, the pandemic. But oftentimes, change in the world is gradual. Isn't it true with regard to the view of morality, homosexuality, abortion, even what's acceptable and not acceptable with regard to conduct? All of that has happened gradually in the world. And it's not until you look back and see how different the world is today with regard to those matters that we see that there have been a lot of changes. But this can be dangerous, because as things gradually change, we may get used to gradual change and forget that there are some sudden changes about to occur. It's interesting to note that Jesus had already said that this day he was referring to would occur at a time that we don't think is likely. So what lesson do we learn from what Jesus said? It's a warning, isn't it? That we can't just sit back and think, well, things are gradually going to develop. We know which way it's going, and maybe it's not going to happen yet. You know, we've got a little bit more wiggle room there with regard to the schedule. But you see, that's dangerous thinking. Now, what we're going to do is consider two examples of areas where perhaps we could be a little guilty with regard to that. For example, our view with regard to the number of anointed ones remaining on the earth. Now, for many years, what did we think? We thought, well, that number will go down and down and down and down. Now, I don't know about you, but me, when that report came out, just how many partakers? And what were we thinking? Well, probably, maybe we didn't say it, but we were thinking, the number will go down, 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 and there'll be just a couple of old guys in a wheelchair who will get their reward.
I don't like you, Mr. Jackson. I think you're a liar, and I think you know you're a liar, and somehow I think you kind of enjoy joking about you being a liar, and it really annoys me. So here he's just like, man, I know about you, but hey, as soon as that report would come out, I would look right at that number. Then he says, what were we thinking? Well, we never said it. You never said that the number of anointed would keep going down, 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 down as everyone giggles in their seats. You never said that? Well, let's go to jw.org to a 1995 Watchtower and look at exactly what you said. So if you go over to their library and you click on magazines and then, okay, let's go to latest and we'll scroll down here to 1990. Wait, what? Why are there so many missing years? Could it be that you're trying to hide something? Huh, that's a little odd. Now, to be fair, it is available on the Watchtower online library, but let's take a look and see what exactly it said. Here, if you go over to paragraph number 6, it says, numbers decrease. In recent years, the number of the little flock on earth has become quite small. This was evident from the 1994 Memorial Report. In some 75,000 congregations of Jehovah's people worldwide, only 8,600 demonstrated by partaking of the emblems of their profession to be members of the remnant. In contrast, the total attendance was 12,200,000. Anointed Christians know this is to be expected. Jehovah has established a limited number, 144,000, to make up the little flock, and he has been gathering it since Pentecost 33 CE. Logically, the calling of the little flock would draw to a close when the number was nearing completion, and the evidence is that the general gathering of these especially blessed ones ended in 1935. Remember, Mr. Jackson just said, well, we never said anything. We've never said anything of the such. We never said the number would just be going down, down. However, the other sheep in the time of the end were prophesied to grow to be a great crowd, which no man was able to number, out of all the nations and tribes and peoples and tongues. Since 1935, the general gathering by Jehovah has been of this great crowd, whose hope is everlasting life on paradise earth. Now, this really pisses me off now. Most of those of the little flock yet on earth are now in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. A few have passed their 100th year of life. All of these, whatever their age, know that through a heavenly resurrection, they will eventually be united with Jesus Christ and rule with him in his glorious kingdom. Those of the great crowd will be earthly subject of Christ King. Let each one rejoice over what Jehovah has in store. Blah, 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 blah. Paragraph 8. And then here in paragraph 9. Those of the great crowd who have already been gathered number in the millions. How this warms the hearts of the remnant, although those of the little flock still on earth continue to decrease in number. They have trained and prepared qualified men of the great crowd to take on responsibilities in connection with God's expanding earthly organization. As Jesus indicated, there will be survivors of the Great Tribulation. We never said that the number would keep going down, down, down. My ass, you had predicated your entire organization on that number. It was the organization that was always pointing, and throughout the 90s, they did this. They were pointing to that number continuing to go down, down, down as evidence that the end was getting closer. There, 30 years ago, he said that most of them are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. 30 years ago. That was a promise. That was what God had promised to his people on earth, that they were in their 70s. Well, they'd be 100 now. Now they're trying to sell this idea that someone in their 50s is part of this special anointed class. That they are supposed to be rulers in heaven with Jesus, part of the 144,000. It is an impossible thing to sell. And I am confident that this charlatan knows that. I think this whole thing is a primer to point to, we don't really know what's going on after all. So when we're going to just change this and say the 144,000, the generations, none of that actually existed. None of it was really in the Bible. Mistakes were made. I mean, I didn't make the mistakes. Those were mistakes made back from those crazy governing body members in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. I don't know about them, but that wasn't very biblical. He is priming Jehovah's Witnesses to accept the changes that are going to happen. But it irritates me to no end for him to sit there and say, oh, well, I mean, we never said that the number would be continuing to go down, down, down. I don't know if he's saying it like we never said it out loud, not from an organization standpoint or from an individual standpoint, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. He's still lying because it was said by the organization. People were saying it. So playing it off and joking about it is so unbelievably frustrating.
Well, I'm exaggerating, but that was sort of the feeling, wasn't it? But now what have we seen in recent years? Those numbers have gone up and up. And not only that, younger brothers have been appointed on the governing body. Now, I know what you're all thinking. 2 new ones, how old are they? We know. You're not Googling now, but you will be. But you see, we need to be careful about what we're thinking with regard to the number of anointed ones left on earth. You see, 19 years ago, I was appointed on the governing body. Even I thought I was too young. Now they tell me I'm not so young anymore. But do we see the point? What does the Bible actually tell us with regard to this? Well, it doesn't say the number would just dwindle down to just having a few older ones left. No. The great crowd of other sheep will be judged on the basis of how they deal with Christ's brothers. So that means the faithful and discreet slave, as well as all the anointed throughout the earth, will continue to be active in doing the work and wanting and needing your support, right up until the time that suddenly they will be reassigned. And isn't that what Matthew 24, verse 31 says? There'll be a gathering, the final gathering of the anointed from all different parts of the earth. So for us to think, well, there's some new ones on the governing body, they don't look too old. Maybe we've got a little bit extra time. No. Jehovah is making sure that the faithful and discreet slave is continuing to work and is effective right up until that time of reassignment.
This is a big reason why I think it's going to be harder for older people to accept all of these changes, and people in their 50s and up, I think, are going to be the ones more likely to be leaving the organization in the coming years versus people in their, 30s and below, or so something like that. I haven't completely worked it out in my head, but I think that people that have been in the organization a little bit longer are not going to accept this guy just sweeping over the problem, because they will have a working memory of a change happening with Watchtower, something important, doctrine, and getting a very detailed biblical explanation about why that change was made, why they thought that thing was the way it was in the past, and other scriptures that correlated, really justifying from the Bible what change was made. That was always the pattern. That was Watchtower's favorite thing to do, was to over-explain things in the Bible. And it made people feel cool. It was like, wow, we really tapped into this other dimension that other people can't understand about the Bible. Now, what does he do with this problem that they have? He addresses the problem. I know what you're thinking. How old are the 2 new governing body members? You're probably going to be Googling it when you get home and thinking to yourself, well, they got to be pretty young, right? He never addresses it. He never answers the question. He never fixes the problem. He just says, don't worry about it. Yeah, just be careful about what you're thinking. Don't think about it. How did he actually, from the Bible, address it? He just says, well, Jesus said, destruction would be suddenly upon them. So therefore, we can appoint 50-year-old governing body members. Doesn't that make perfect sense? And no respectable Jehovah's Witness that, reads their Bible daily will be able to look at this and say, you didn't actually tell me why this change is just so readily accepted, other than you said so. You said I have to accept it. You said not to think about it. You said it's going to be okay. It's just, trust me, bro. They threw the Bible in the garbage bin and they said, trust me, bro. Thanks for your lifetime of service, but we're going to make some changes and trust me.
So that's one subject. The second subject we'd like to talk about is our view with regard to the start of the Great Tribulation, with the destruction of Babylon the Great. When we look through the scriptures, in Revelation chapter 16, what does it tell us? That the waters would gradually dry up. Yes, churches are losing support in some countries. For example, Europe. It wasn't that long ago that most nations in Europe were very religious. But now people are turning their backs on religion. But at the same time, when we look at Africa and South America, we see that religion still has a strong influence. So now, what could be that little voice in our mind saying, well, yeah, we see it's going in the right direction, but maybe not just yet. We've got a little bit more time left. But again, we need to remember what the scriptures tell us. And if you'd turn with me this time, please, to Revelation chapter 17. This is one of the chapters that describes the destruction of false religion, or in other words, when the Great Tribulation starts. So let's read Revelation 17 and verse 17, and note, please, what it tells us. For God put it into their hearts to carry out his thought, yes, to carry out their one thought by giving their kingdom to the wild beast until the words of God will have been accomplished. Now, what is this one thought? Well, up to now, we've said the one thought is their desire to turn on false religion. And we can understand that because the context is talking about the destruction of false religion. But you see, if you look back at that verse, what is the one thought? Now, this means we have to adjust our understanding, another change. What does it say? The one thought refers to the nations being willing to hand over power, their political power, to the scarlet-colored wild beast, the United Nations. Let me repeat it, because you're in shock now, and you need to write this down. Okay. The one thought refers to the nations being willing to hand over power to the United Nations. Now, why is that exciting? Well, the fact that nations will eventually turn on religion really isn't that surprising, is it? Gradually, we've seen that happening. And we say, yes, we see which way it's going. But what about nations empowering the United Nations, handing over their personal political power so the United Nations has more power? It has teeth, as it were. At the moment, it's like a toothless organization, isn't it? That seems unbelievable. No nation does that. But what is it that happens? It is an act of God. Jehovah puts that one thought into the minds of the nations.
This is absurdity that is hiding in plain sight. This is like one of those times where you think to yourself, do the governing body nowadays sit around and think how far they can push this thing, how ridiculous of something that they can say, and people will just accept it? And I'm not even saying this to be funny. I'm saying it like in earnest. Is this an actual moment? Because he tells people right to their face, I know what you're thinking. That's insane. That's absurd. That'll never happen. Political parties all turning over their power to the United Nations in a global effort towards a one world government? But no, it's going to happen. Japan and Russia and Iran and the United States and Canada and France and Switzerland all collectively together are going to decide together to get rid of false religion. It is such an absolutely absurd claim. It's bananas. And he acknowledges that it's bananas. And then he just says, I know you think this pill is going to be way too hard to swallow, but I'm going to shove it down your throat anyway. I have to think, maybe I'll think about this and change my opinion on it, but it feels to me that this is a blatant example of them being nefarious. Hey, let's set up this system where, hey, we'll eventually get rid of this generation thing. As religion gradually dies out, that won't really be the sign. It's going to be this sudden thing that we know is never going to happen. We will be long dead. This isn't just ensuring the viability of our claims for the next, 20 years or 30 years. We're kicking this can down the road like 500 years, maybe 500 years from now. Then eventually they'll be like, okay, well, now we need a one world government. But that is such a absurdly far down the road thing, if it would ever happen at all, that it makes me think they know exactly what they're doing. And that is just lying to people. Is this the hostile takeover that we've all been waiting for? Everyone's been wondering, well, what do they do with all that money? Why do they need all that money? The preaching work's dying on all this. They're talking about money and building stuff, and there's not actual growth in the numbers. Why do they want my children? Now they're telling me I got to send my children to Bethel as soon as they're 18? Is this the time when now it's like, yep, let's kick the organization into high gear, get as much money out of people as we possibly can so we can live a life of luxury? If it's some, 80-year-old governing body members, it's kind of hard to imagine. But now as they get younger, it's not that far out of the possibility. They got a lot of good years left ahead of them that they can have an extravagant lifestyle from the revenue that this organization could potentially be generating. So I don't know about you. Maybe I am just been staring at these bright lights too long. Maybe I've been thinking about the governing body and the annual meeting a little bit too much. But when I hear him say that this thing is absurd, I know you're thinking it's crazy, and then just goes on to say, believe it anyway. Because, again, where we're not doing the whole intense biblical breakdown and correlating things, it's just believe it because I said so. It feels to me like this could be a turning point of when the organization turns a little bit more nefarious, but maybe I'm being a little doomsday here myself.
Yes, they will empower the United Nations so that the United Nations will be in a position to take action against false religion. Now, this adjustment in understanding also means that we have to adjust our understanding of verses 12 and 13. So if you're in Revelation 17, please, let's look at verses 12 and 13. The 10 horns that you saw mean 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they do receive authority as kings for 1 hour with the wild beast. These have one thought, so they give their power and authority to the wild beast. So up to now, we've assumed these 10 kings, which represent all the political powers and governments in the world at the moment, that they did this during the last days by supporting, first of all, the League of Nations and then the United Nations. But now, what do we understand this to be, seeing we understand verse 17? Well, there will come a time when all political powers on earth, which includes many who have never been part of the 7 world powers, they will see that they need to collectively pool their power by giving it to the United Nations to try and solve some of the problems in the world. And they will rule, notice, what does it say, for 1 hour, just a short period of time. So this newly empowered United Nations, from that time on, will rule collectively for a short time, but it will enable them to destroy false religion and fight against Jesus and Jehovah's people. Now, isn't that exciting?
Yes. If you are a Jehovah's Witness watching this, this is exciting news for you. Because he just got done telling you that people could come back to the organization after they see the signs of the outbreak of the Great Tribulation. That was in last year's annual meeting. Now they're saying that this Great Tribulation, when it starts, when all governments give their power to the United Nations, when that happens, not just the major political powers of the world, but all world governments collectively do something that will literally just never happen. Whenever that thing that never happens, when you see that as evidence, you can go back to the organization. So stop right now doing any Jehovah's Witness stuff and live your freaking life. Live your life. Be happy. Be productive. Treat people kindly, do good things for other people, and enjoy a rich, satisfying life right now. And when, as this guy says, all nations get together and give power to the United Nations, and you see that, according to him, it is okay if you come back to the organization at that point. According to him, he says he gives you permission to leave right now. And when you see these things happen, you can come back. The door will be open. This is the single dumbest talk Watchtower has ever made. And I think they're predicating it on that idea that they can say anything and people will just believe it. Because if people think about this just for 1 second, just 1 second, you will be free from life as a Jehovah's Witness. And having done this myself, let me tell you, it is a fantastic thing when you have true freedom.
But now we're back to our subject again. You see, gradually things happen. So we might say, well, yes, gradually I see Babylon the Great's losing influence in some places, maybe not yet. But don't expect that you'll see governments gradually wanting to give over power. They don't want to do that. It takes an act of God. Jehovah will put it into their hearts. This will occur with suddenness. Yes, then the Great Tribulation will start. A sudden change, not something that happens gradually. So what have we learned in our discussion? Well, yes, some things change gradually. But brothers and sisters, remember, there are some sudden things that are about to occur. Let's remember the two things as a reminder. First of all, the remaining anointed ones will suddenly be taken to heaven while they are still very active. The second one, Jehovah will suddenly move the nations to give their political power to the United Nations. So what's the takeaway? Don't be complacent. Don't think, oh, this is going to gradually change. No, some things won't gradually change. They will occur suddenly as acts of God. So be ready and don't be surprised by sudden change.
Thank you, Brother Jeff. You've given us much to think about. We'll probably have to watch that talk a few times to get all the points. Well, now if you'd like to stand and stretch a bit, we have an opportunity to glorify Jehovah with a song of praise.
So, is he talking about sudden changes in the world? Is he talking about the sudden changes of something that he knows damn well will never happen? Or is he trying to prep people's minds for the idea that there will be sudden changes in the organization and not to be surprised by them? Hey, some things happen gradually. A lot of the changes we've made with Watchtower's history have been very gradual. They've been talking, man, this thing has been around for 140 years. They keep talking about the next generation. Is he dropping the little breadcrumbs and now this is the definitive talk where they are going to say, or just the definitive talk where they are letting people know there are big changes on the horizon, so get prepared for them. Personally, I think that's what's happening. I think they're just getting people ready to go because there's not a whole lot of like real things happening in this annual meeting. I'll do another video, like I said before, and sum it all up in about 12 minutes. But yeah, it's a lot about what isn't said than what is said, I suppose, specifically. But I left this little piece of Oscar here mentioning songs because I just had to talk about it a little bit. Usually during an annual meeting, it's something people look forward to where they're getting, these great new publications or updates about their building projects. And now when people are going to the annual meeting, all they're getting is songs. I won't play the clips for you because, Watchtower music super sucks. But they get all excited because they announce they're going to be releasing a new song this time and a new song next year at the annual meeting. And everyone kind of sort of claps. That's the big news. This is what you get. So they've been talking about all this growth of the organization. Man, all this growth and everything. What do they have to show for it? Like, before, you had so much information that you would get as a Jehovah's Witness. You would be inundated with so much material, from Watchtowers to Awakes to yearbooks to a yearly release of a book, that like a study publication. Every single year you get a new one. You would have tracts and magazines. You would get videos that were actually interesting, where you'd get like a little mini documentary. You'd get cassette tapes that were like the Bible dramas, but just in an audio format. They can't have audio format of their current dramas because 94% of them is just women looking pensively at the sun or at babies. People don't get anything anymore. And so I could not help but laugh that the only major release from this annual meeting was the audio of the music from the Good News About Jesus and one new song. You have a global corporation and their annual output is a song. Here they're talking about all this growth that they've gotten, patting each other on the back. Oh, man, we need more. Hey, I know what you parents are thinking. Oh, man, I really want what's best for my kids. You bring them on to Bethel. We'll make sure we put them to good use. And then the parents are sitting there thinking, doing what? So you can make one song? This doesn't take 10,000 people that can speak 700 languages around the world to make one song. It's absolutely hilarious to me just how far this organization has fallen. I think this is as far as I can take one video, so I might have to break this up. There's not a whole lot more interesting that happens in the next couple talks, but I will do some follow-up with those. But as far as the long video about what really happens at the annual meeting, or everything you need to know about the annual meeting, I think we can pretty much sum it up right there. So thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, be kind, and don't forget to show yourself the same kindness that you show to others. And don't worry, because the organization is in good hands, because it has the next generation of the generation that was, that is also the generation that is, but it's related and correlated to the generation that never was and is at the same time. Because of a 7-horned wild beast that sprouted 10 horns on the 14th of October in 1924, you can be assured that this is the final generation that will survive the great day of God Almighty. God bless.